Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's NC Family Weekly Update. Jerry, Jaden, how are you both doing?
Doing fine.
Doing just fine this morning, doing just fine.
Well, it has been another action-packed week at the General Assembly. I know we seem to say that every week, but it really has just been a busy time. Guys, let's just jump right in. The first big item that we saw movement on this week was Senate Bill 406, entitled Choose Your School, Choose Your Future. Jerry, tell us about this bill.
Yeah, this was in the Senate Education Committee that this bill passed this week and would greatly expand school choice in North Carolina. I know a number of years ago they started this program, Opportunity Scholarships. At that time, they were $4,200. Last session, they increased it to 90% of the state allocation for funding, which bumped it up to $5,900, which obviously with the cost of education increasing, to have this program and to help people make school choices that fit their children the best, they needed to continue to increase that. Well, this would be another increase not only in the overall funding, but the people who are eligible to receive this assistance. The new provisions, if they pass, will basically make this available to all families in the state, but it will be on a sliding scale. What it will mean for the highest income individuals, they would be eligible, their families, for 45% of that allocation that's made by the state for public schools now. Then as the income levels change, it would be 60%, 90%. And for the very first level of income under this law, they would be eligible for 100% of the current state allocation for public school funding. So this would be a big increase. Still overall in the scheme of education in North Carolina, it's a small percentage, but it is allowing families to say, my child is unique. I see that they have needs that aren't currently being met, even though their school system may be great, it may not be the right fit. So it's letting families choose what's best for their children and letting the money follow their child where they go to school.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. And for years, North Carolina has been a leader in the nation on school choice, but we fall pretty far behind states like Florida and Arizona. And this bill will help move us closer to one of the very top states in the nation on school choice. So we're very hopeful that this legislation is going to pass. What Jerry was talking about was the Senate bill being considered in the Senate. Next Tuesday, the House version of this bill is scheduled to come up in the House Education Committee. So both chambers are working to pursue this legislation. And again, we're very hopeful that it'll pass. So, Jaden, any observations or thoughts on that?
Well, just as a former recipient of an Opportunity Scholarship myself, I'm very thankful that North Carolina is doing good work on this issue, and I'm glad that it will expand school choice in our state.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and it does recognize that, one size does not fit all. All kids are different, and parents should have the right. They do have the right, but that right should be appreciated and acknowledged and enhanced by policies like broader educational choice in North Carolina. So we're really excited about that. Thank you, Jerry, Jaden. We also saw action on a number of other notable bills this week, and I do want to mention just a couple of those real quickly. The first is Senate Bill 579, entitled Prevent Harm to Children. Now, this is a very simple bill that simply enhances the penalty for knowingly disseminating obscenity in the presence of a minor. This sounds like a very common sense bill, and it is. However, it did not pass both the Senate Judiciary and Senate Rules Committees this week without opposition. In fact, several drag performers, men who dress up as women, testified in opposition to the bill because they said they felt targeted by it. Well, NC Family testified in favor of the bill and reiterated that the bill did not make any changes at all to the current law as it defines obscenity and the sexual conduct that is part of what obscenity is defined as in literature and exhibitions. In fact, if a particular action or material is considered obscene under the current law, if and when this bill passes, it would be considered obscene under the existing law. So these individuals who are expressing opposition to the bill clearly didn't fully understand what the bill did or just didn't want to. We do want to thank Senator Buck Newton for bringing this bill forward. because it is designed to protect children from exposure to obscene content and materials. Any thoughts on that, Jerry?
No, and I
Jay?
will say one thing that was helpful in the debate, although it was almost shocking, is one of the members wanted people to understand what was being considered. And as John said, it's not changing the definition of obscenity, but they read what our statutes say.
Yeah.
And it is, quite honestly, it's shocking, but it also is helpful that our state law is this clear about what is inappropriate. And I think a lot of the people who were pushing back against this pull back when they realize, oh, I didn't know that's how obscenity is defined.
Yeah, I know in the Senate Rules Committee yesterday, although there were people that spoke in opposition and members had some questions about the bill and so forth, when the vote came, there were no audible votes in opposition to the bill. So I think that Senator Jim Perry's reading of the stellate and very explicit language that is contained in the statute that defines what this sexual content, obscene sexual content is, helped to really make that point. So we appreciate his willingness to put that information out there. Yep. The other bill that I'd like to mention is House Bill 819, called the Medical Ethics Defense Act. And this bill would actually codify in state law broad religious liberty or right of conscience protections for healthcare providers like doctors and nurses, for healthcare institutions like hospitals, and for healthcare payers, which are employers who provide health insurance to their employees, insurance companies, and health plans. I want to read the preamble to this bill because I think it really encapsulates what the bill is about. And it says, quote, "The right of conscience is fundamental, and no medical practitioner, healthcare institution, or healthcare payer should be compelled to participate in a healthcare service that they object to on the basis of conscience, whether such conscience is informed by religious, moral, or ethical, or philosophical beliefs or principles." In other words, doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers don't check their religious liberties and their rights to conscience at the door when they enter the hospital or when they put on a doctor's coat or nurses' scrubs or a stethoscope. So this is a broad bill. We already, of course, have conscience protections for abortion in North Carolina for healthcare providers who object to participating in abortion. This would broaden these rights of conscience protections in our state laws to cover any other service or procedure that a healthcare provider and these other entities may have objection to. So any input on that?
It's good, I think, that our state law would be clarified to cover every area of conscience.
Right.
That's the way our government is set up to allow that exercise by individuals.
And these religious liberty rights, of course, are recognized and protected by our Constitution. So this bill passed the House Health Committee on Thursday and now goes to the Judiciary 1 Committee in the House. So we expect that is likely to come up next week for consideration. And speaking of next week, we are expecting a barn burner of a week at the General Assembly. The crossover deadline is next Thursday, May the 4th. And what that deadline is for bills that do not contain appropriations or finances. They have to pass one chamber to the other to remain eligible for consideration for the remainder of the session. So members who have sponsored bills, introduced bills in both the House and the Senate are going to be working really hard to get their bills heard to meet the crossover deadline. And so we're anticipating hundreds of bills to be considered next week in dozens of committees. So folks, keep your eyes and ears open in your email inboxes because we may be sending out action alerts and other information that's vital for you to engage with your lawmakers during this really critical week of the legislature. And also, and maybe providentially on May the 4th, is the National Day of Prayer. I know there's some events scheduled for downtown Raleigh. Jerry, talk about that for a minute.
Yes, there are. Next Thursday, as John said, at noon, there is going to be a time of prayer across the street from the legislature in between the two museums. And we all know, God wants us to pray. He says, pray without ceasing, to be in constant communication all through the day and night, all through our life. But it's great that back in 1988, Congress passed a law calling for time to turn to God in prayer and meditation in churches, in groups, and as individuals. And again, we need to be doing that all the time, but please join us if it's possible for you this coming Thursday. Like I say, across the street from the legislative building in between the two museums. And I know we had an email relating to that information.
And speaking of that, we'll have links below the video for information. I know we put out a story this week on the Opportunity Scholarship, the school choice expansion bill. There'll be links to other important information below the video, so take advantage of that information. Jerry Jaden, thank you. Thanks for all your great efforts this week. And in advance of next week, we're going to need it. So, folks, we appreciate your attention, your support of our work, and especially your prayers. So please be in prayer for us next week. As Jerry said, come and participate downtown across from the legislative building in the National Day of Prayer celebration at the legislature. And we will see you next week. God bless you and your families. Thanks.